Hello and welcome to another Spec 3 informational video. Today we're going to talk about what the difference is between Spec 3 and Spec E36. So before I start, you should be aware that I race Spec 3, and I believe that Spec 3 is the best class on the planet, so this video is intrinsically biased. All of the people that race in both classes we're going to talk about today are fantastic people, and you will have a great time no matter what class you choose. So you're probably aware of Spec E30, Spec E46, Spec Miata. That's simple. Spec 3, like many of the other classes you may know of with spec in the name, like Spec Miata or Spec E46, is a class where all cars are built to the same spec, and they all share the same engine and chassis, which is the E36 and the M50 B25 TU. Unfortunately, unlike Spec E30 and Spec E46, the name Spec E36 is trademarked by the BMW Club of America, and thus no other sanctioning bodies can have a class with that name. That said, the National Autosport Association is the most popular sanctioning body for spec racing series, such as Spec E30 and Spec E46. And thus, it is also the most popular for spec racing for E36s, and that class is called Spec 3. So following the same paradigm that the other spec BMW classes have with NASA, Spec 3 has a very strict rule set that only allows one engine, one type of suspension, and a limited subset of other parts on the car, so that all the cars are exactly the same when they race each other, and you're racing driver to driver, not car to car. So if you're looking for the leading E36 spec racing class, look no further than NASA Spec 3. The numbers speak for themselves, but at the time of publishing this video, Spec 3 has expanded to 2 new racing regions in 2024. We're approaching 100 cars being built. We're bringing on an average of 10 to 15 new racers getting licensed every year, and a new build gets started on a new car on average once every 2 to 3 weeks. And there are no signs of this slowing down. So let's say that doesn't matter to you, and you want to look at the actual specifications of the car, and you're trying to decide between Spec 3 and Spec E36. So the differences are fairly simple if you look at it from one side, and fairly complex if you look at it from another side. So if you're building a Spec 3, you must have a 325, it must have a Getrag 250, there's one set of suspension, you have to run Hawk DTC 60 brakes, the list goes on and on. There's one part for everything. If you build a NASA Spec 3 legal car, the only thing you need to change to make it legal to race in Spec E36 is to change the shocks and springs. So if you install the Spec E36 coilover kit, the car should be legal for Spec E36 racing. So now that we've talked about what is on a Spec 3, we'll talk about some of the things that are different on a Spec E36. So the big thing and the probably most important thing to talk about here is that the Spec E36 class allows the 328, and they also allow you to use the 2.5 liter block from the 323i. Spec 3 does not do this because classes that have allowed multiple engines in the same chassis have shown to have problems with balance of power. So famously, Spec Miata does this, where they allow the 1.6, the 1.8, and also the variable valve timing 1.8, and currently on the national stage, the NB with the variable valve timing is by far the most dominant car. No other spec class that you'll find out there besides Spec Miata allows multiple engines. Spec E36 also has much more open rules and less restrictions on other parts of the car, such as brake pads, camber plates, anti-roll bars. There are 2 suspensions. One is a modern ground control coilover setup, and then they have 2-ish other options that are grandfathered in old setups that people may still have. You're allowed to run any engine tune. Some engines are OBD1, some are OBD2. You can put any kind of tune that you want on there. You can also run any kind of exhaust. You can also do poly in more places, such as the front control arm bushings. And then their rule set has no published max horsepower. It's not very typical for BMW Club to have a dyno on site to dyno test cars, although that is becoming more common, whereas NASA is very dyno dependent, has lots of classes that have to go on the dyno for compliance, including Spec 3. Now, of course, the parts listed here may be different by the time that you watch this video, so please consult the rules for whatever organization and class you're looking at. So ultimately, if you're looking to build a car that can run in both classes, you should build a Spec 3, and you can just swap out the suspension, which, who knows, the shocks and springs may change for Spec 3 sometime in the future, and then it's just automatically legal. But if you do build a Spec E36 and elect to use a 328, or use a ZF transmission, or run an exhaust that doesn't meet the Spec 3 rules, or run a DME tune that doesn't meet the Spec 3 rules, or any of those things, then that won't be legal for Spec 3. As always, if you have any more questions about Spec 3, check out spec3.org to find lots of helpful links to things like the NASA Spec 3 Constructor's Guide, the parts list, or to the NASA Spec 3 discussion group on Facebook. It's filled with 2,000 people that are very excited about the class and happy to answer any questions you may have. Thanks for watching.